I watched the HOA snowplow slam into my mailbox at 7:30 on a Tuesday morning, the screech of metal against metal cutting through the winter air like a rusty chainsaw. The driver didn't even stop. He just kept going down Maple Ridge Drive in our supposedly upscale subdivision in Burlington, Vermont, leaving behind a mangled mess of twisted metal and splintered wood, where my perfectly functional mailbox had stood for the past 3 years. My name is Lucas Langford, and I had lived in the Whispering Pines community for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. I knew the exact count because I had marked it on my calendar the day we closed on the house, thinking it would be a fresh start after my divorce. My ex-wife had gotten the house in Portland, and I had taken the cash settlement and moved across the country for a job at a tech startup. The neighborhood had seemed perfect at first, with its pristine lawns, uniform mailboxes, and that false sense of security that comes with knowing someone else is handling the landscaping and snow removal. I stood there in my driveway wearing nothing but sweatpants and a flannel shirt, my breath forming clouds in the freezing air as I stared at the destruction. The mailbox had been one of those standard black metal ones with my house number stenciled on the side. Nothing fancy, but it had done its job. Now it looked like it had gone 3 rounds with a bulldozer and lost spectacularly. I grabbed my phone from my pocket and took about 15 photos from different angles, making sure to capture the tire tracks in the snow that led directly from the plow to my demolished mailbox. Then I called the HOA office. It was early, but I knew they opened at 7. Someone picked up on the 3rd ring. Whispering Pines HOA, this is Brenda speaking. Yeah, hi, this is Lucas Langford at 2847 Maple Ridge. Your plow just destroyed my mailbox. There was a pause and I could hear papers shuffling. I'm sorry, can you repeat that? The HOA snowplow hit my mailbox about 5 minutes ago, completely demolished it. The driver didn't stop. Oh, another pause. Well, you'll need to file a claim with our insurance company. I can give you the number. That's it, no apology. No acknowledgement that your driver just committed property damage and drove off. Brenda's voice took on that particular tone that customer service representatives use when they're reading from a script. Sir, I'm giving you the information you need to resolve this situation. The insurance company will handle your claim. Would you like the number or not? I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling a headache forming. Yes, please give me the number. She rattled off a phone number, which I quickly typed into my notes app. Then she hung up without another word. Great start to the day. I went back inside my house, poured myself a cup of coffee that had finished brewing while I was outside, and sat down at my kitchen table. Through the window, I could see my sad, destroyed mailbox listing at a 45-degree angle like a drunk trying to find his way home. I dialed the insurance company. This time I got a recorded message. The office didn't open until 9. Of course it didn't. I left a detailed voicemail with my name, address, phone number, and a description of what happened. Then I got dressed for work, trying to push the whole irritating situation out of my mind. The thing about HOAs that I had learned over the past 3 years is that they exist in this weird legal gray area, where they have just enough power to make your life miserable, but not enough oversight to keep them in check. Our HOA was run by a board of 5 people, none of whom I had voted for because I had moved in after the last election. The president was a woman named Patricia Morrison, who I had only met once at a mandatory community meeting. She had that particular haircut that seems to be standard issue for women who want to speak to managers, and she had spent 45 minutes of that meeting discussing the proper shade of beige for exterior house paint. I worked from home 3 days a week, and Tuesday was one of them. My job as a software developer for a financial services company meant I spent most of my time staring at code on multiple monitors, trying to find bugs that could potentially cost the company millions of dollars. It was stressful work, but it paid well, which was why I could afford a house in Whispering Pines despite the hefty HOA fees. At 9:02, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize with a Vermont area code. "Hello, is this Lucas Langford?" A woman's voice, professional but warm. "Yes, this is Lucas." "Hi, Mr. Langford. This is Jennifer from Tri-State Insurance Group. I got your voicemail about the mailbox incident this morning. I'm very sorry that happened. Can you walk me through exactly what occurred?" I gave her the full story while pulling up the photos on my computer to email them to her. She listened without interrupting, making small sounds of acknowledgement as I spoke. "Okay," she said when I finished. "I've got your email with the photos. These are very helpful. What I need from you is a written estimate for the replacement cost of the mailbox. Once I have that, I can process your claim. Our policy with the Whispering Pines HOA covers property damage caused by HOA contractors and employees, so this should be a straightforward claim." "How long does the process usually take?" "Once I receive your estimate, typically 5 to 7 business days for approval, and then another week or so for the check to be issued. You can have the work done before the check arrives, but some people prefer to wait." I thanked her and hung up, feeling slightly better about the situation. At least the insurance company seemed competent and professional, which was more than I could say for the HOA office. I spent the rest of the morning researching mailboxes. What had started as a simple task of finding a replacement quickly turned into a deep dive into the surprisingly complex world of residential mail delivery systems. There were basic post-mounted boxes, decorative options, high-security models, and even smart mailboxes with cameras and package delivery compartments. My original mailbox had cost maybe $60 at Home Depot. But as I scrolled through options, I kept coming back to a particular model called the Fortress Deluxe. It was a heavy-duty, powder-coated steel mailbox with a reinforced post, decorative stone column base, and a locking mechanism for security. It looked like something that could survive a nuclear blast. The price tag was $850, not including installation. I sat back in my chair, thinking. The insurance was going to pay for whatever I claimed, assuming it was reasonable. And given that their plow had destroyed my property, I didn't feel particularly guilty about upgrading. I called a local contractor whose information I found online. "Bergman Contractors, this is Tom speaking." "Hi, Tom. My name is Lucas Langford. I need a quote for mailbox installation." "Sure thing. What kind of mailbox are we talking about?" I gave him the model number for the Fortress Deluxe. There was a low whistle on the other end of the line. "That's a nice one. Heavy, though. You'll need a proper concrete foundation for the post, probably 18 inches deep to be safe." With the mailbox, post, stone column, installation, and concrete work, I'd estimate around $1,300 total. "Can you send me a written quote?" "Absolutely. I can have it to you by email within an hour." We exchanged information and hung up. $1,300. That was more than 20 times what my original mailbox had cost. But it would also be absolutely beautiful and virtually indestructible. I felt a small twinge of guilt, but then I remembered the sound of the plow hitting my mailbox and the complete lack of care from the HOA office. The guilt evaporated. Tom's quote arrived in my inbox at 11:15. It was professional and detailed, breaking down the costs for materials, labor, and even disposal of the old mailbox. I forwarded it to Jennifer at the insurance company with a brief note explaining that this was the quote for my replacement mailbox. She called me back within 20 minutes. "Mr. Langford, I received your quote. I have to ask, are you sure this is the mailbox you want? It's significantly more expensive than a standard replacement. I'm sure. My original mailbox was adequate, but after having it destroyed, I'd like something more durable. The quote is reasonable for what's included." There was a pause. "Well, the thing is, our policy typically covers like-for-like replacement. A basic mailbox for a basic mailbox." I felt my jaw tighten. "Your policy covers property damage caused by HOA contractors. My property was damaged. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable. I'm asking for a mailbox that will last and won't get destroyed the next time your client's plow driver isn't paying attention." "I understand your frustration, Mr. Langford. Let me talk to my supervisor and call you back." She hung up, and I sat there feeling my blood pressure rise. This was exactly the kind of runaround I had been afraid of. I pulled up the HOA bylaws on my computer and started reading through the sections on insurance and liability. Buried in Section 7, subsection 4, I found what I was looking for. The association maintains comprehensive general liability insurance covering all property damage caused by association contractors, employees, or agents. Homeowners affected by such damage are entitled to full restoration to pre-incident condition or better. That was the key phrase. I took a screenshot and waited for Jennifer to call back. She did, 35 minutes later. "Mr. Langford, I spoke with my supervisor. We're prepared to approve your claim for the full amount of $1,300. I felt a rush of satisfaction. "Thank you. I appreciate you working with me on this." "You're welcome. I'll process the paperwork today. You should receive a check within 10 business days. If you want to proceed with the installation before then, that's fine. Just keep all your receipts." I called Tom Bergman back immediately and scheduled the installation for the following Monday, which would give him time to order the mailbox and prepare the materials. He seemed surprised that I was moving forward so quickly, but didn't ask questions. That evening, I was in my garage organizing tools when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Patricia Morrison standing on my porch, wearing a puffy white coat and an expression that suggested she had just smelled something unpleasant. "Mr. Langford." Her voice had that particular nasal quality that grated on my nerves. "That's me. What can I do for you, miss?" "Morrison, it's Mrs. Morrison. I'm the president of the Whispering Pines HOA board. I understand there was an incident this morning with your mailbox." "That's right. Your plow destroyed it. I've already filed an insurance claim." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, I heard about that. I also heard that you're claiming for an extremely expensive replacement." "I'm claiming for a quality replacement that won't get destroyed the next time your contractor isn't paying attention." "Mr. Langford, I think you're taking advantage of the situation. The HOA's insurance premiums will go up if we have large claims like this. That affects everyone in the community." I stared at her for a moment, genuinely amazed at the audacity. "Let me make sure I understand. Your contractor destroyed my property. I filed a legitimate claim for a replacement. And you're here to tell me that I should ask for less money so that your insurance premiums don't go up. I'm saying that, as a member of this community, you should consider the impact of your actions on your neighbors." "I am considering them. I'm considering that if the HOA hired competent contractors who didn't destroy property, this wouldn't be an issue. I'm also considering that if the board managed the HOA's affairs properly, insurance claims wouldn't be a problem." Her face flushed red. "That's very disrespectful, Mr. Langford." The board works very hard to maintain this community, and I pay $300 a month in HOA fees for that maintenance, which includes not having my property destroyed. If that's too much to ask, maybe the board needs to reconsider its contractors." We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Patricia spoke, her voice icy. "The board will be reviewing this matter at our next meeting. Good evening, Mr. Langford." She turned and walked back to her white Lexus SUV parked in my driveway. I watched her drive away, feeling a mix of annoyance and satisfaction. I hadn't asked for any of this, but I wasn't going to be bullied into accepting less than what I was entitled to. The next few days passed without incident. I worked, went to the gym, and generally tried to avoid thinking about the HOA drama. My temporary mailbox, a plastic storage bin duct taped to a wooden stake, looked ridiculous but functioned well enough for the postal carrier to deliver my mail. On Thursday evening, I got an email from the HOA board. The subject line read, "Notice of Hearing Property Compliance Matter." My stomach sank as I opened it. The email informed me that the board had received complaints about my temporary mailbox being non-compliant with community standards. I was required to attend a hearing the following Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the community center to discuss the matter. Failure to attend could result in fines. I read the email 3 times, my anger building with each pass. They had destroyed my mailbox, and now they were threatening to fine me for having a temporary replacement while waiting for their insurance to pay for a proper one. The sheer hypocrisy was stunning. I forwarded the email to Jennifer at the insurance company with a note asking if the claim could be expedited. She called me the next morning. "Mr. Langford, I saw your email. Unfortunately, I can't speed up the process. The check has been issued, but it takes time for the accounting department to process it. However, I do have some good news. I spoke with my supervisor again, and we're appalled by how the HOA is treating you. We're going to send a letter to the board making it clear that the delayed replacement is not your fault, and that any fines levied against you for the temporary mailbox will be added to their claim costs." Will that actually stop them? It should. The HOA's policy has a clause about good faith cooperation with claims. Retaliating against a homeowner for filing a legitimate claim violates that clause. If they proceed with fines, they could risk their coverage. I thanked her and felt marginally better. At least someone was on my side in this mess. Monday arrived, and with it, Tom Bergman and his crew. I watched from my kitchen window as they worked, first digging out the old mailbox and post, then excavating a deep hole for the new foundation. The Fortress Deluxe arrived on Tom's truck around 10 a.m., and I went outside to look at it up close. It was beautiful. The powder-coated steel had a deep black finish that looked almost glossy. The stone column base was made of manufactured stone that looked like real granite, and the whole assembly had a weight and solidity that screamed quality. Tom and his assistant spent 3 hours installing it, mixing concrete, leveling everything perfectly, and making sure the mailbox was at exactly the right height for postal regulations. When they finished, I stood back and admired their work. The new mailbox looked like it belonged in front of a mansion, not my modest 3-bedroom colonial. It was easily the nicest mailbox on the street, possibly in the entire subdivision. "That should last you about 50 years, Tom said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Maybe longer. Those Fortress models are built like tanks." I paid him with my credit card, knowing the insurance check would cover it when it arrived. He gave me a receipt and a 1-year warranty on the installation work. After he left, I took several photos of the finished product and sent them to Jennifer with a thank you note. My neighbors started noticing immediately. The guy across the street, whose name I could never remember, came over that evening while I was checking my mail. "Hey, that's a nice mailbox." "Where'd you get it?" "HOA Plow destroyed my old one. Insurance paid for the replacement." His eyebrows shot up. "Seriously? Man, I wish the Plow would hit mine. This is way nicer than what I've got." We chatted for a few minutes about nothing in particular, and then he headed back to his house. Over the next few days, several other neighbors stopped by with similar comments. A few of them mentioned that they had also had issues with the HOA Plow over the years, though none as dramatic as mine. Tuesday evening arrived, and with it, the dreaded HOA board meeting. I drove to the community center, a bland brick building near the entrance to Whispering Pines, and parked in the half-empty lot. Inside, the meeting room was set up with a long table at the front for the board members and rows of folding chairs for residents. About a dozen people were scattered through the room, most of them looking bored. The 5 board members were already seated. Patricia Morrison sat in the center, flanked by 4 others I didn't recognize. She had a nameplate in front of her that read "President" in gold letters. The other board members had similar nameplates: Vice President, Treasurer, Secretary, and Member at Large. Patricia banged a gavel, which seemed excessive for such a small gathering. This meeting of the Whispering Pines HOA Board is now in session. First order of business is a property compliance hearing for Lucas Langford of 2847 Maple Ridge Drive. I raised my hand. "That's me." She fixed me with a cold stare. "Mr. Langford, the board has received multiple complaints about the non-compliant mailbox at your property." "You mean the temporary mailbox I had to install after your Plow destroyed my original one?" "The reason for the non-compliance is irrelevant. Our community standards require all mailboxes to meet specific aesthetic guidelines." I stood up, holding a folder I had brought. "I have several documents here I'd like the board to review. First, photos showing your Plow destroying my mailbox. Second, a copy of my insurance claim. Third, a copy of the receipt for my new mailbox, which was installed yesterday and is fully compliant with community standards. And fourth, a letter from Tri-State Insurance Group explaining that the delayed replacement was due to normal claims processing time, and that any fines levied against me will be added to the HOA's claim costs and could jeopardize your coverage." I walked up to the table and placed copies in front of each board member. Patricia's face went through several shades of red as she read the insurance letter. "This is highly irregular," she said, her voice tight. "What's irregular is threatening a homeowner with fines after your contractor destroyed his property. What's irregular is not apologizing or taking responsibility. What's irregular is this entire hearing." The treasurer, a balding man in his 60s, cleared his throat. "Patricia, I think we should table this matter. The homeowner has clearly resolved the compliance issue, and the insurance company's letter raises some concerns." "I agree," said the secretary, a woman with short gray hair. "There's no violation to address anymore." Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but the other 3 board members were nodding in agreement. She banged her gavel again. "Fine. The compliance matter is dismissed. Mr. Langford, you're free to go." I gathered my folder and walked out, feeling victorious but also exhausted. The whole situation had been so unnecessary. All they had to do was apologize and handle the insurance claim professionally. Instead, they had turned it into a confrontation. As I reached my car, someone called my name. I turned to see a man in his early 40s jogging toward me. He had been sitting in the back row during the meeting. "Hey, I'm Derek Matthews. I live over on Birch Street. That was awesome in there. Patricia has been running this HOA like her personal fiefdom for 3 years, and nobody ever stands up to her." We shook hands. Lucas Langford. Nice to meet you. Listen, there's an HOA election coming up in April. 4 of the 5 board seats are up for election, including Patricia's. You should consider running. We need people who aren't afraid to push back against this nonsense. I don't know. I'm not really a committee person. Just think about it. We have until March 1st to submit nomination papers. I'm running for treasurer. It would be good to have some allies on the board. He gave me his phone number and headed back inside. I drove home thinking about what he had said. Running for the HOA board was the last thing I wanted to do with my free time. But the idea of Patricia Morrison continuing to abuse her little bit of power was grating. The insurance check arrived on Friday, exactly 10 days after I filed the claim. It was for the full $1,300, and it came with a letter thanking me for my patience and apologizing for the inconvenience. I deposited it immediately and paid off my credit card. Life returned to normal for a few weeks. Winter continued its grip on Vermont, with snow falling regularly and temperatures hovering in the teens. My Fortress Deluxe mailbox stood proudly at the end of my driveway, completely unbothered by the elements. I noticed that the HOA plow driver was now giving my mailbox a very wide berth when clearing my street. In early February, I got a text from Derek Matthews asking if I wanted to grab coffee. We met at a local shop in downtown Burlington, a cozy place with exposed brick walls and the smell of fresh ground beans. "So here's the situation," Derek said after we sat down with our drinks. "I've been talking to other homeowners, and there's a lot of frustration with the current board. The fees keep going up, but the services don't improve. Patricia rules with an iron fist, and the rest of the board just goes along with whatever she wants. Sounds about right based on my experience. There are 180 homes in Whispering Pines. If we can get just 30 or 40 people organized, we can completely change the board. I've already got commitments from 3 people to run for seats. With you, that would be 4. We need 5 to take control. I really don't know if I'm the right person for this. I work long hours and I don't have experience with HOA governance." Derek leaned forward. "Nobody has experience until they do it, and from what I saw at that meeting, you're not afraid to do your homework and stand your ground. That's exactly what we need." I sipped my coffee, considering. The truth was, I was still angry about how the mailbox situation had been handled. And if I was honest with myself, I did care about the community. I had invested my money and my future here. Maybe it was time to invest some effort too. "Okay," I said. "I'll run. What do I need to do?" Derek's face broke into a huge grin. "Yes. Okay, first thing is the nomination paperwork. You need signatures from 10 homeowners in good standing. I can help you get those. Then we need to put together a platform and start campaigning." Over the next few weeks, Derek and I spent our evenings and weekends organizing. We went door to door talking to neighbors, explaining our vision for a more transparent and responsive HOA board. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People were tired of the status quo and ready for change. We found our 5th candidate in a woman named Fiona Sullivan, who lived 2 streets over from me. She was a lawyer specializing in real estate law, and she was absolutely furious about some recent fencing decisions the board had made. With her expertise, we had someone who actually understood the legal frameworks HOAs operated under. The current board didn't take our campaign lying down. Patricia Morrison sent out multiple emails warning homeowners about the dangers of electing inexperienced activists to the board. She organized a counter-campaign, holding coffee meetings and sending glossy mailers that must have cost thousands of dollars. Where that money came from was unclear, though Fiona suspected it was from the HOA's operating budget, which would be highly inappropriate. The election was held on a Saturday in early April. The community center was packed with homeowners, many of whom I had never seen at HOA events before. Our campaign had energized the community in a way that nobody expected. Each candidate gave a 3-minute speech. Patricia went first, talking about stability and experience and the importance of maintaining property values. When my turn came, I kept it simple. 3 months ago, the HOA's contractor destroyed my mailbox and drove away. When I filed an insurance claim, the board president came to my house to tell me I was asking for too much money. Then they threatened me with fines for having a temporary mailbox while waiting for the insurance claim to process. That's not leadership. That's bullying. I'm running because I believe homeowners deserve respect and transparency from their HOA board. Thank you. The room erupted in applause. I saw Patricia's face turn red from across the room. The voting took an hour. When the results were announced, our slate had won every seat except member at large, which went to one of the incumbents, a retired accountant who had always seemed reasonable. Derek was the new treasurer, Fiona was the new secretary, and I had been elected vice president. A woman named Margaret Chen, who had run on our ticket, was the new president. Patricia Morrison stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out without a word. The other defeated board members followed her. The room buzzed with excited conversation. Our first official board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Margaret, Derek, Fiona, the holdover board member Carl, and I met at the community center with the HOA's management company representative, a nervous-looking guy named Stephen. "Okay," Margaret said, calling the meeting to order. "First order of business is a comprehensive review of the HOA's finances and contracts. Stephen, we're going to need copies of every contract, the last 3 years of financial statements, and all insurance policies." Stephen nodded frantically, taking notes. Over the next several weeks, we dove deep into the HOA's operations. What we found was disturbing. The previous board had signed multiple contracts with companies owned by Patricia Morrison's husband. The snowplow company that had destroyed my mailbox was one of them. They were being paid nearly double the market rate for their services. The landscaping contract was even worse. The HOA was paying $80,000 per year for services that should have cost maybe $40,000. And the landscaping company was registered to an LLC owned by Patricia's son-in-law. "This is self-dealing," Fiona said during one of our review sessions. "It's probably illegal, and it's definitely a breach of fiduciary duty." "What are our options?" Margaret asked. "We need to consult with the HOA's attorney, but potentially we could pursue civil action against Patricia and the other board members who approved these contracts. We might be able to recover some of the excess payments." We brought in the HOA's attorney, a sharp woman named Rebecca who had apparently been ignored by the previous board whenever she raised concerns. She confirmed Fiona's assessment. "The problem is proving intent," Rebecca explained. "If Patricia can argue that she disclosed the conflicts of interest and the board voted to approve the contracts anyway, it becomes harder to prove wrongdoing." "Do we have minutes from the meetings where these contracts were approved?" Stephen pulled up the meeting minutes. They were sparse, barely more than a paragraph for each meeting. There was no mention of conflict of interest disclosures anywhere. "That's a problem for them," Rebecca said with a slight smile. "HOA board members have a legal obligation to disclose conflicts of interest. The failure to do so, combined with the above market rates, gives us a strong case. We voted unanimously to pursue legal action." Rebecca drafted a demand letter to Patricia Morrison and her husband, laying out the evidence of self-dealing and demanding repayment of the excess amounts paid under the contracts. The letter estimated the total at just over $200,000 over 3 years. 2 weeks later, we got a response from Patricia's attorney. They denied all wrongdoing and threatened to countersue for harassment and defamation. "That's a bluff," Rebecca said when she showed us the letter. "They're hoping you'll back down." I recommend we file a formal complaint with the Vermont Attorney General's office and proceed with a civil suit. We did both. The Attorney General's office opened an investigation into the HOA's financial practices. Our civil suit was filed in Chittenden County Superior Court. The local news picked up the story. A reporter from the Burlington Free Press interviewed Margaret and me about the situation. The headline read, "Whispering Pines HOA Board Accused of Self-Dealing Scheme." The article detailed the contracts and the legal action. My phone started ringing off the hook with other homeowners calling to thank us and offer support. A few people called to complain that we were airing the HOA's dirty laundry in public, but they were a small minority. The case moved slowly through the legal system, as these things do. Discovery was extensive, with both sides requesting mountains of documents. Patricia and her husband were required to provide financial records, which they fought tooth and nail. Meanwhile, the new board worked on cleaning up the HOA's operations. We put all contracts out for competitive bidding. The new snowplow contract came in at 40% less than what we had been paying Patricia's husband's company. The landscaping savings were even more dramatic. We also implemented new transparency measures. All board meetings were recorded and posted online. Financial statements were published monthly. We created an online portal where homeowners could submit maintenance requests and track their status. The changes were popular with most residents. Our quarterly homeowner satisfaction surveys showed approval ratings above 80%, compared to less than 40% under the previous board. In September, 6 months after we filed the lawsuit, Patricia's attorney reached out about a settlement. They offered to pay back $50,000 and admit no wrongdoing. "That's insulting," Derek said when Rebecca presented the offer to the board. "It is," Rebecca agreed. "But here's the reality. If we go to trial, it could take another year and cost the HOA $50,000 in legal fees." There's always risk in litigation, even with a strong case. You need to decide if pursuing full recovery is worth the cost and uncertainty. We debated for 2 hours. Finally, Fiona spoke up. "I say we reject the offer and proceed to trial, not because of the money, but because of the principle. If we settle for this, we're sending a message that self-dealing is okay as long as you pay back some of it when you get caught. That's not acceptable." We voted 4-1 to reject the settlement, with only Carl voting to accept. Rebecca filed our response, and the case moved toward trial. The trial was scheduled for January, nearly 10 months after we filed the lawsuit. In the meantime, the Attorney General's investigation concluded. They issued a report finding that Patricia Morrison and the previous board had violated multiple provisions of Vermont's homeowner association laws. The AG's office imposed fines and required Patricia to take HOA governance training if she ever wanted to serve on an HOA board again. The AG's findings strengthened our civil case significantly. Patricia's attorney tried to get the report excluded from evidence, but the judge denied the motion. The trial lasted 3 days. Rebecca methodically presented our evidence: the contracts, the inflated prices, the lack of conflict of interest disclosures, the meeting minutes that showed a pattern of rubber stamping approvals. Patricia's defense was weak, essentially arguing that the services were worth the premium prices because of their quality. We countered with testimony from our new contractors, who were providing better service at lower prices. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found in our favor and awarded the HOA $215,000, which included the excess contract payments plus interest. Patricia's face was ashen as the verdict was read. Her husband, sitting next to her, looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Outside the courthouse, a small group of Whispering Pines homeowners who had attended the trial cheered and hugged us. A reporter asked me for a comment. "This was never about revenge," I said. "It was about accountability and making sure that the HOA serves the homeowners, not the other way around. I hope this sends a message that board members can't use their positions for personal profit." The interview aired on the local news that evening. My phone exploded with messages of congratulations. The legal victory was satisfying, but what mattered more to me was seeing the community improve. With the recovered funds and the savings from the new contracts, we were able to reduce HOA fees by 15% while actually improving services. We built a new playground near the community center, something families had been requesting for years. We upgraded the entry signs and landscaping at the subdivision entrance. One Saturday in late February, almost exactly a year after the mailbox incident, I was outside washing my car when a family walking by stopped to admire my mailbox. "That's the famous mailbox," the dad said to his kids. "The one that started everything," I laughed. "It's just a mailbox." Maybe, but it's a nice reminder that standing up for yourself matters. My wife and I just bought a house 3 streets over. We chose Whispering Pines partly because of all the positive changes we heard about. After they left, I stood looking at the Fortress Deluxe, still looking pristine and sturdy a year after installation. In a weird way, getting my mailbox destroyed had been one of the best things that could have happened to me. It had forced me out of my comfortable isolation and into community involvement. I had made friends, learned about local governance, and helped make real positive changes. My ex-wife called that evening, something she did once every few months to check in. We had managed to maintain a cordial relationship after the divorce, once the initial anger and hurt had faded. "I saw you on the news," she said. "Fighting HOA corruption, that's very you." "Is it? I never thought of myself as a fighter." "You are when you think something's wrong." "Remember when you spent 6 months battling with the city about that stop sign in our old neighborhood? They eventually installed it." "Exactly. You don't give up. It's one of the things I always admired about you." We talked for a while about her life in Portland and mine in Vermont. She was remarried and happy, which I was genuinely glad to hear. I had dated a few people over the past year, but nothing serious. Maybe that would change, maybe it wouldn't. I was content either way. The following month, our board held a community appreciation event at the clubhouse. We grilled burgers and hot dogs, set up yard games, and generally gave people a chance to meet their neighbors in a relaxed setting. The turnout was huge, probably 150 people out of the 180 households. Derek found me near the grill flipping burgers. "Can you believe this a year ago?" "Not even a little bit." "Margaret is already talking about what we should focus on next year. She wants to add a community garden and maybe put in some walking trails in the green space behind the playground." "That sounds good. Community building, literally." Margaret appeared beside us, holding a plate piled with food. "Are you two gossiping about me?" "Only saying good things," Derek assured her. She smiled. "I just wanted to say thank you, both of you. This community was dying a year ago. People kept to themselves, nobody trusted the board, and there was just this general feeling of resentment. Now look at it. Kids playing together, neighbors actually talking to each other, people proud to live here. You made this possible." "We all did it together," I said. "That's the whole point, right? Community isn't something that just happens. It takes effort and people who care. An elderly woman I recognized from a few streets over approached us. "Excuse me, are you Lucas Langford?" "I am." "I just wanted to thank you, dear. My granddaughter visited last month, and she couldn't stop talking about how nice the new playground is. She's already asking when she can visit again. Little things like that matter to families. I'm glad she enjoyed it." That's what the HOA fees should be paying for, things that make the community better. She patted my arm and wandered off toward the dessert table. The party continued until well after dark. People lingered, not wanting the evening to end. It felt like something had shifted, like we had finally become an actual community instead of just a collection of houses that happened to be near each other. As I drove home that night, I took the long way through the subdivision, looking at the houses with their lights on and cars in driveways. Each one represented a family or individual who had chosen to live here, who paid their dues and followed the rules and deserved to be treated with respect and fairness. My house looked welcoming as I pulled into the driveway. The Fortress Deluxe mailbox stood sentinel at the end of the drive, illuminated by the street light. It really was a ridiculously nice mailbox for a middle-class neighborhood, but it had become something more than just a place to receive mail. It was a symbol, a reminder that standing up for yourself could lead to positive change, even when it seemed easier to just accept the situation and move on. Inside, I poured myself a glass of bourbon and sat on my back deck, despite the chilly evening air. Through the trees, I could see lights from neighboring houses. I thought about Patricia Morrison, wondering if she had learned anything from the experience or if she just felt bitter about being caught. Probably the latter, but that wasn't my problem anymore. The next few months passed peacefully. The board continued its work improving the community. We organized a neighborhood watch program after a few car break-ins, which brought the crime rate down to essentially zero. We negotiated a group discount with a local internet provider, saving every household about $20 a month on their bills. Small victories, but they added up. In May, I got a call from a reporter for a regional magazine. They were doing a feature on effective HOA governance and wanted to interview our board. We agreed, and a photographer came out to take pictures around the neighborhood. They specifically wanted a shot of my mailbox, which made me laugh. The article came out in July. It was 3 pages, with photos of the new playground, the community garden we had installed in April, and yes, my mailbox. The headline was How One Destroyed Mailbox Led to HOA Reform in Vermont. The article traced the whole story, from the snowplow incident through the legal battle and the community improvements. It quoted several Whispering Pines residents talking about how much better life in the neighborhood had become. It also included a brief interview with Patricia Morrison, who declined to comment on the lawsuit, but said she stood by her record as board president. Copies of the magazine started appearing in waiting rooms and coffee shops around Burlington. People recognized me occasionally, which was weird but not entirely unpleasant. Mostly it just sparked conversations about HOA issues, and I was surprised by how many people had their own horror stories. One conversation, with a guy I met at the gym, led to me being invited to speak at a statewide HOA conference in Montpelier. I was terrified of public speaking, but Margaret convinced me it would be good for the community's profile and might help other neighborhoods dealing with similar issues. The conference was in September, and I was scheduled to speak on a panel about accountability and transparency in HOA governance. The room was packed with board members from HOAs across Vermont, probably 200 people. When my turn came to speak, I told the mailbox story, hitting the key points. The initial incident, the hostile response from the board, the insurance claim, the discovery of the self-dealing, and the eventual legal resolution. Then I talked about what we had learned and how we had rebuilt trust in the community. The thing that surprised me most, I said, was how much positive change could come from what seemed like a disaster. Getting my mailbox destroyed was frustrating and annoying, but it opened my eyes to deeper problems in how our HOA was being run. And once we started fixing those problems, we discovered that most people actually wanted to be involved and cared about their community. They just needed leadership that respected them and listened to their concerns. During the queue and a session afterward, dozens of people had questions. How did we handle resistant homeowners? What was our budget process? How did we ensure board meetings were productive? I answered as best I could, drawing on our experiences over the past 18 months. After the panel, people lined up to talk to me individually. Several board members from other HOAs wanted contact information for our attorney and our management company. A few people just wanted to share their own stories and vent about their HOA problems. One woman, probably in her 50s, waited until everyone else had left. "I'm the president of my HOA in Brattleboro. We've been dealing with a board member who I'm pretty sure is taking kickbacks from contractors. I've suspected it for a year, but I didn't know how to prove it or what to do about it. Your story gave me hope that we can fix it. Document everything," I told her. "Meeting minutes, contracts, invoices, everything. And find an attorney who specializes in HOA law. Don't try to handle it alone." She thanked me and left, and I stood there in the empty conference room feeling a strange mix of emotions. I had never wanted to be an HOA crusader or a public speaker. I had just wanted my mailbox replaced, but somehow I had ended up here, and it felt right. That evening, I had dinner with Fiona Sullivan, who had also spoken at the conference on the legal aspects of HOA governance. We went to a farm-to-table restaurant in downtown Montpelier, the kind of place with exposed beams and locally sourced ingredients. "You were good up there," Fiona said over appetizers. "Natural speaker." I was terrified the entire time. It didn't show. "And what you said about community building resonated with people. I could see it in their faces." We talked about the conference, the board, and our plans for Whispering Pines. Fiona was passionate about creating model bylaws that other HOAs could adopt, something that would prevent the kind of abuses we had dealt with. "I've been thinking," she said. "There's no reason this has to be just about our community. We learned a lot through this process. We could help other neighborhoods dealing with similar issues. Like HOA consultants, sort of. More like community organizers. Help people understand their rights, how to research their HOA's finances, how to run effective board meetings." Rebecca said she'd be willing to provide some pro bono legal advice to homeowners who need it. The idea appealed to me. We'd need to be careful not to overextend ourselves. The board still has to be our primary focus, of course, but maybe a workshop once a quarter, something like that. Just to give back and help prevent other communities from going through what we did. We kicked the idea around for the rest of dinner and drove back to Burlington energized about the possibilities. The workshops became a reality in November. We held the first one at the Whispering Pines Community Center, opening it to anyone in the state who wanted to attend. About 40 people showed up, representing maybe 24 different HOAs. We spent 3 hours going through basics, understanding HOA bylaws, financial oversight, conflict of interest policies, and effective communication strategies. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. People felt empowered with information and grateful that someone was willing to help. We scheduled quarterly workshops going forward. In December, 2 years after the mailbox incident, I stood in my driveway on a cold Saturday morning watching the new HOA snowplow driver carefully clear the street. He was a local guy named Mike who Derek had found through a competitive bidding process. He took pride in his work and hadn't hit a single mailbox in 8 months on the job. My Fortress Deluxe mailbox stood unscathed, its powder-coated finish still pristine despite 2 winters of Vermont weather. It had become something of a landmark in the neighborhood. New residents were told the story, and it had taken on an almost mythical quality in the retelling. Mike finished the street and pulled up next to my driveway, rolling down his window. "Morning, Lucas. Got everything cleared out nice for you." "Thanks, Mike. Looks great. Hey, I wanted to tell you my cousin lives in a development over in South Burlington. Their HOA board is a mess, apparently. I gave him your contact information for those workshops you run. Hope that's okay." "Absolutely. Happy to help." He drove off, and I checked my mail. There was a holiday card from Derek and his family, a couple of bills, and a letter from the Vermont Secretary of State's office. I opened it curious. It was a formal commendation, recognizing the Whispering Pines HOA board for excellence in community governance. Apparently, we had been nominated by someone who attended one of our workshops, and the state had selected us for recognition. The commendation came with an invitation to a ceremony in Montpelier in January. I went inside and called Margaret to tell her. She was thrilled. "This is amazing. We should bring the whole board to the ceremony." "Definitely. And maybe we can use it as an opportunity to talk about HOA reform more broadly. I've been thinking about some legislative changes that might prevent self-dealing situations like what we dealt with." "Look at you, getting political." The Lucas I met 2 years ago would never have suggested lobbying for legislative change. The Lucas from 2 years ago was pretty naive about how things worked. I've learned a lot since then. The ceremony in January was formal but friendly. The Secretary of State gave a short speech about the importance of effective local governance, even at the HOA level. Our board received a plaque and certificates, and Margaret gave a brief acceptance speech thanking the community for their trust and support. Afterward, we had a chance to talk with some state legislators who were there for the event. I brought up the idea of stronger conflict of interest requirements for HOA boards and clearer financial disclosure rules. A couple of representatives seemed genuinely interested and asked us to put together some written recommendations. Over the next few months, with Fiona's legal expertise and help from Rebecca, we drafted a proposed bill. It was modest in scope, just requiring HOA boards to file annual financial disclosures and establishing clear penalties for self-dealing. But it would make a real difference in preventing the kind of corruption we had dealt with. Finding a sponsor for the bill took some work, but eventually a representative from Burlington agreed to introduce it. The legislative process was slow and often frustrating, but we showed up to committee hearings, organized homeowners to contact their representatives, and kept pushing. The bill passed the House in April with only minor amendments. The Senate took longer, but it finally passed in early June. The governor signed it into law at the end of June, with our board invited to attend the signing ceremony. Standing in the governor's office watching him sign the bill was surreal. 2.5 years earlier, I had been a guy who worked from home and barely knew his neighbors. Now, I was part of a legislative victory that would affect thousands of Vermont homeowners. "You should be proud," the governor said, shaking my hand after the signing. "Grassroots advocacy like yours is what democracy is all about." The law would take effect in January, giving HOAs time to comply with the new requirements. We knew it wasn't perfect and wouldn't solve every problem, but it was a meaningful step forward. That summer was peaceful and productive. The board continued its work, but things had settled into a comfortable routine. The drama of the early days had given way to steady progress on community improvements. We added solar panels to the community center, making it energy independent. We organized movie nights in the park behind the playground, with families bringing blankets and lawn chairs to watch classic films on a big outdoor screen. My personal life had improved too. I had started dating a woman named Grace who worked as a teacher at a local elementary school. We had met at one of the community events and hit it off immediately. She was smart, funny, and completely uninterested in HOA drama, which was refreshing. In August, on the 3-year anniversary of moving to Whispering Pines, I hosted a barbecue at my house. Derek and his family came, along with Margaret, Fiona, Carl, and several neighbors who had become genuine friends. Grace helped me grill while everyone else played cornhole in the yard. "Can you believe it's been 3 years?" Derek asked, beer in hand. "Remember when you first moved in and barely talked to anyone?" I was going through a rough patch. Divorce, new job, new state. I wasn't in a social mood. And now look at you. Local celebrity, legislative advocate, community organizer. I don't know about celebrity. But yeah, things have changed. We ate dinner on my deck as the sun set, talking and laughing about everything and nothing. At one point, someone asked about the mailbox, and I told the full story for probably the 100th time. It never got old, though. The details changed slightly with each telling, getting polished and refined into a better narrative, but the core remained the same. Later, after everyone had left and Grace and I were cleaning up, she asked, "Do you ever regret it? All the time and energy you put into the HOA fight?" "Never. Not even once. It changed my life for the better in ways I never expected, even though it started with something negative, especially because of that. Sometimes the worst things that happened to us opened doors we didn't even know existed. That mailbox getting destroyed forced me to engage with the community in a way I never would have otherwise, and that engagement led to everything else." She smiled and kissed me. "That's a pretty healthy perspective. I learned it the hard way." As I locked up the house that night, I walked down to the end of my driveway and stood looking at the Fortress Deluxe mailbox in the moonlight. It was still the nicest mailbox in the neighborhood, possibly in all of Burlington. But more than that, it was a reminder that good things could come from bad situations if you were willing to fight for what was right and engage with the world around you. The mailbox would probably outlast my time in this house. Eventually, I would move, whether for a new job or a new relationship or just a desire for change. But the improvements to Whispering Pines would remain. The transparency policies, the community connections, the culture of engagement and accountability. Those things would endure long after I was gone, helping homeowners I would never meet. That was the real victory, I thought as I walked back to my house. Not the nice mailbox or the legal settlement or even the legislative change. The real victory was creating something lasting that made people's lives better. That was worth fighting for. That was worth the time and energy and occasional frustration. Inside, Grace was waiting with 2 glasses of wine. We sat on the couch and she leaned against me, comfortable and content. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Just how strange life is, how one random event can change everything." The mailbox, she laughed. "I'm glad that Plow hit it then. Otherwise we might never have met." I hadn't thought about it that way, but she was right. If the mailbox hadn't been destroyed, I wouldn't have gotten involved with the HOA board. Without the board involvement, I wouldn't have been at the community events where we met. Everything was connected, one thing leading to another in ways that were only obvious in retrospect. "Me too," I said, and meant it completely. The fire crackled in the fireplace, and outside, snow began to fall gently on whispering pines. Somewhere down the street, my indestructible mailbox stood guard, a silent testament to the unexpected ways our lives can change for the better.